It was a busy Friday night in a luxury restaurant. The kind of place where chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting a warm, golden glow on the polished marble floors. Waiters in crisp uniforms rushed back and forth, balancing trays of food and drinks, making sure every guest was attended to with the highest level of care. The restaurant was filled with well-dressed people, their laughter and soft conversations filling the air. Among the staff was a young waiter named Alex. He had been working at the restaurant for a few months now, but it still felt a bit overwhelming. He had grown accustomed to the flashy cars parked outside, the expensive watches on wrists, and the luxurious tastes of the clientele. But tonight, something felt different. The evening was bustling, yet Alex couldn't shake the feeling that something unexpected was about to happen. This restaurant was no stranger to wealthy individuals. Business tycoons, celebrities, and entrepreneurs often passed through its doors. Alex had served many of them, but he was about to meet someone who would change his life in a way he could never have anticipated. The door to the restaurant swung open, and a man walked in. His entrance was quiet, almost unnoticed by most of the guests, yet there was something about him that made him stand out. He was tall, dressed simply in a dark jacket and jeans, but the way he carried himself made it clear. He was someone important. Alex noticed him right away, but couldn't quite place him. He had the kind of calm, confident presence that many wealthy people had, but there was no flashy suit or designer accessories to make it obvious. He didn't draw attention to himself in the usual ways. Instead, he moved through the restaurant like someone who didn't need to announce his status. The man took a seat at a table near the back, glancing over the menu with a steady gaze. As he sat there, his eyes didn't dart around looking for recognition. He wasn't interested in the spotlight. Alex tried not to stare, but he couldn't help it. There was something intriguing about the man, though he couldn't put his finger on exactly what it was. Maybe it was the way he seemed to be at ease, not needing to prove anything to anyone. Or maybe it was the quiet power he exuded, which didn't come from what he wore, but from who he was. After a few minutes, Alex made his way to the billionaire's table. He approached with a polite smile, ready to take the man's order. The billionaire glanced up at him, offering a small, friendly nod. "Good evening," Alex said. "What can I get for you tonight?" The billionaire's voice was calm, almost soothing. "I'll have the filet mignon, medium rare, please, and a glass of red wine. The Cabernet, if you have it." Alex quickly jotted down the order. Coming right up. There was something about the way the billionaire spoke that made Alex feel at ease, despite the usual nerves he felt when serving high-profile customers. His tone was casual, yet there was an air of kindness that Alex hadn't noticed in many of the wealthy guests. As Alex turned to leave, the billionaire stopped him. "Wait," he said, his voice gentle. "How long have you been working here?" Alex hesitated for a moment before answering. "A few months now. It's a lot to take in sometimes." The billionaire smiled, as if he understood exactly how Alex felt. "I see. You're doing a good job. Keep it up." Alex blinked in surprise. Most people didn't bother to notice the servers, let alone offer words of encouragement. He nodded, a little unsure of how to respond, but grateful nonetheless. The night went on, and the restaurant buzzed with conversation. Alex continued serving guests, but his mind kept drifting back to the billionaire. There was something about the man's presence that made him stand out. It wasn't just the way he spoke. It was the calmness he carried, the sense of peace that seemed to surround him. Eventually, the meal was finished, and Alex found himself walking back to the billionaire's table with the check. He couldn't help but wonder how much the man would tip. Alex had served many wealthy people, and while some left generous tips, most simply paid and left without a second thought. Alex placed the check down in front of the billionaire, offering a polite smile. "Here you go, whenever you're ready." The billionaire nodded and picked up the check. But instead of just handing over the usual amount, something unexpected happened. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a thick wad of cash. Alex's heart skipped a beat. Was this some kind of mistake? He had seen big tips before, but nothing like this. The billionaire didn't say a word as he carefully counted out a stack of bills. He placed it on the table and pushed it toward Alex. Alex glanced at the stack, and his eyes widened. It was $50,000. Is this correct? Alex stammered, unsure of how to react. He hadn't seen anything like this before. Was it a joke? The billionaire looked up at him with a calm expression, almost as if he expected the question. Yes, it's correct. I hope it helps. Alex stood frozen for a moment, still trying to process what was happening. $50,000? That was more than he made in an entire year. He didn't know what to say. Thank you, he managed to say, his voice shaky. But why? The billionaire smiled, his gaze steady and kind. You'll understand in a moment. The billionaire leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. Alex stood there, still staring at the stack of cash in disbelief. For a moment, there was silence between them, as if the billionaire was carefully choosing his words. Let me explain, the billionaire began, his voice calm but filled with a certain depth. When I was younger, I was in a position very much like yours. I worked as a waiter in places just like this one. I didn't have much. I was trying to make ends meet, just like you. Alex blinked, surprised by the revelation. The billionaire had been a waiter? That didn't fit the image Alex had in his mind of the wealthy man sitting before him. But the billionaire continued, as if reading Alex's thoughts. Back then, he said, there was a man who worked at one of the restaurants I served at. He was kind to me, treated me with respect when most people didn't even notice me. One day, when I was struggling to pay rent, he handed me a small envelope. Inside was $1,000. Alex's eyes widened. The billionaire had received help when he was in need. The man didn't ask for anything in return. He just said, "You'll pay it forward someday." I never forgot that moment. It changed my life. Alex stood there, stunned, as the billionaire continued. I'm giving you this tip because I want to pay it forward. That's what the man did for me. And I want you to have the chance to do something kind for someone else someday. The billionaire's gaze softened. I know that $50,000 is a lot of money, but it's not just about the money. It's about the message. Small acts of kindness have the power to change lives. Alex was silent, trying to absorb the weight of the words. This wasn't just about a big tip. It was about something much deeper. The billionaire wasn't just offering him money, he was offering him a chance to be part of a much larger story. Thank you, Alex finally whispered, his voice barely above a breath. He didn't know what else to say. He felt both humbled and inspired. The billionaire gave him a gentle smile. Don't thank me yet. The real thanks comes when you pass it on. Alex stood there, still staring at the cash, his mind racing. He couldn't quite believe what had just happened. The tip was more than he could ever imagine. But it wasn't just the amount that left him speechless. It was the billionaire's words, the meaning behind the generosity. For a moment, Alex forgot about the bustling restaurant around him. Everything seemed to slow down, and all he could focus on was the weight of the tip and the weight of the lesson that came with it. He hadn't expected this. He hadn't expected someone to be so kind, to give so much with no strings attached. He turned to walk back to the kitchen, his legs feeling a bit wobbly. As he passed other tables, the world around him seemed distant, like he was in a dream. His mind kept replaying the billionaire's words over and over. Small acts of kindness have the power to change lives. Back in the kitchen, Alex stood in front of the counter, still holding the envelope with the $50,000 inside. His hands were shaking slightly as he set it down, unsure if he should tell anyone about what had just happened. He didn't want anyone to think he was exaggerating or lying. But then his coworker Sarah looked over at him. She had seen the shock on his face. Alex, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost. Alex glanced at her, still struggling to find the right words. You won't believe what just happened, he said, his voice filled with disbelief. A customer. He just tipped me $50,000. Sarah stared at him, then laughed, thinking he was joking. 50,000? You're kidding, right? I'm serious, Alex said, holding up the envelope. 50,000. And he didn't just give me the money. He gave me a story too. A lesson. Sarah paused, her smile fading. She looked at him, trying to figure out if he was really telling the truth. Alex nodded, his face serious now. He said it's not about the money. It's about kindness. Paying it forward. I don't know what to do with all of this. Alex glanced down at the cash again, still trying to grasp what had happened. Over the next few days, Alex couldn't stop thinking about the billionaire and his words. He started to see the world around him in a new light. Every time someone smiled at him, every time someone showed kindness, he remembered the lesson he had learned. And it wasn't just about big gestures, it was about the small things, helping someone in need, being kind when no one expects it. He realized that the billionaire's lesson wasn't just for him, it was for everyone. A chain of kindness, one that started with a simple act at a restaurant and would ripple out to make a difference in ways no one could imagine.